It is time to have an uncomfortable conversation about Quinn Hughes and the Minnesota Wild. It's true that Quinn is one of the best defensemen in the NHL. NHL Network named him as the second overall guy behind Cale Makar, and for the most part, I think the majority of NHL fans would agree. Quinn Hughes scored 53 points in 48 Minnesota Wild games upon being traded mid-season. He had 15 points in 11 Wild playoff games, and he was the best defenseman at the Olympic Games, scoring 8 points in 6 games for Team USA over there, en route to a gold medal. Quinn Hughes is making $7.8 million a year till the end of July 2027. And this is a contract that will need to be renewed. With that said, the longer Quinn remains unsigned, the longer the Minnesota Wild are unable to get this done, the greater the risk becomes. And I wanted to dive into a few things over here. First, there was an article posted by Josh Cybulski on ProHockeyRumors.com that I thought was a pretty fun read to go out there and dissect. And then there was a post made on the R Hockey News subreddit that's got this whole Riddler thing going on. There are some really interesting comments that I thought would be worth looking at as well. Quinn Hughes has all the leverage in his contract negotiations right now. Cybulski writes how there has perhaps never been an NHL player in history with the kind of leverage that Quinn Hughes holds in his current contract negotiations. Hughes is in the prime of his career, he is a franchise player, he has already earned a good chunk of money, has siblings on another team, and plays for a team that paid a franchise-altering price to acquire him just a few months ago. The NHL has rarely seen anything quite like this. The Wild gave up Rossi, Bouillon, Ogren, and a first to acquire Hughes late last year. At this point, walking away without a long-term extension would make the trade an absolute disaster. Minnesota GM Bill Guerin has every incentive to avoid even the perception of failure, and that is one of the biggest reasons Hughes holds so much leverage. Now, we understand how good he is, just what he does to control possession, how he drives offense, but how he also has full control of the situation, and he could ask for a blank check if he wanted to. This is especially true since the Wild have tied their competitive window to keeping him long-term. Hughes and his agent know the next point is true. There is not a single comparable replacement for Hughes in the entire National Hockey League. If the talks fall apart and the two sides stop negotiating, there isn't a trade or signing out there that would allow Minnesota to replace Hughes. Even if they somehow recovered the assets they traded to get him, it would stunt their win-now opportunities and leave them a worse team in the near future. Now, the entire Kirill Kaprizov situation also plays into it. The fact that he got $17 million AAV and for a time was the number one paid player in the National Hockey League until Mr. Ol Leo Carlson set the mark at 18, and then Celebrini, who shortly followed at 18.8. Quinn is on a team where they've already shown they are willing to pay their superstars in order to keep them around. So, that puts him in a pretty good spot if he wants to maximize his earning potential. The article then goes out there and says that it's hard to recall a player of Hughes' pedigree reaching UFA status. The last time a defenseman with Hughes' pedigree hit UFA status might have been the mid-2000s when Chara and Niedermayer hit free agency in consecutive summers in 05 and 06. While those were big-name Hall of Famers who went on to win Stanley Cups with their new teams, neither had the offensive upside of Hughes or the youth, as Chara was 29 when he had hit free agency, and Niedermayer was 31 and turned 32 a few weeks later. Yeah, no, Chara was 29 in 2005, he won a Stanley Cup 6 years later in 2011, at the ripe old age of 36. This gets even more interesting when you talk about the New Jersey Devils and the fact that Jack and Luke Hughes exist. It's the elephant in the room during negotiations and something Minnesota is thinking about as they try to lock Quinn up. The Hughes brothers playing together would be very unique, as it wouldn't be siblings getting together at the end of their careers for a nostalgia tour or simply to do something they've always wanted. It would be three brothers playing together during the prime of their careers, surrounded by other solid pieces in a similar age bracket. That opportunity is unheard of, and it's something the Wild need Hughes to pass on if they want to sign him. Now, this is pretty cool, right? Playing with your brothers. It would be a fun experience for all three of these guys, but this Reddit post has some interesting comments that I thought was interesting to dive into as well regarding the brother dynamic. The Lost Canuck, they say here on Reddit, do I miss Quinn Hughes in Vancouver? Yes. Would it be very funny, though, if he does not re-sign in Mini? Also yes. New Jersey has entered the chat. Because little buddy isn't a team player. Quit Hughes, Oh Gigachoud said. Now this is where things get interesting. Turbulent Oil 700 said, this is probably a bit galaxy brain given how stupidly good Quinn is in particular, but man, are we absolutely sure putting the three brothers together wouldn't create some weirdly toxic locker room? Morty Hooper says he was a cliquey guy in Vancouver, and that wasn't even with his brothers. Oh, did he exclude you from the locker room, grab ass? He was the captain during the peak of a toxicity era, and he stiffed charity and fan events. Public knowledge, not just hearsay. Another reply goes out there and says, yeah, I agree. It would definitely create some sort of a clique or hierarchy in New Jersey. It doesn't help that all three of them are awkward as hell, too. It's not a bad take. Quinn is not a leader, at least at this stage of his career. I believe he's the type that expects everyone around him to be great, not the type of leader that makes everyone around him better. Another reply says, I'm a huge New Jersey Devils fan, and I've heard from a reputable AHL person that Jack Hughes absolutely would not go for Luke Learning D in Utica. This is a major concern of mine, especially with Quinn being an elite player and Jack almost at the level. And then Luke, who still overhandles the puck on the blue line and makes a fair amount of risky passes. It's a recipe for power imbalance, at the least. So obviously, what we're doing, we're just reading Reddit comments. None of these people are Elliot Friedman, or at least I don't think they are. But this idea of having Quinn in a locker room with his two brothers, potentially being seen as an issue, that's an idea that I'm here to listen to. And it's not just because I'm a salty Canucks fan who's pissed off that Quinn and his magnificent career did not continue and live on forever in Vancouver lore. Now there's a really big stain on what this guy had done in Vancouver, despite the fact that he won a Norris and he was a 90-point defenseman and he was so good and he was doing all this stuff. Heck, Vancouver was already cliquey with Quinn on this team without his brothers. And so, from all we've heard with the Team USA shenanigans and the cliquiness of that NTDP class, specifically that NTDP class, which includes guys like Quinn Hughes and Dylan Larkin and Austin Matthews and the Kachucks, that pre-Jack Hughes era, or I guess you could lump Jack Hughes into it, maybe the Frank Nazar era? You could say what you want about the eras of the NTDP, but Quinn Hughes and his brothers having a locker room all to themselves, especially if you think about this, and if you believe in this piece of text right here, that Jack Hughes was absolutely not willing to let Luke Hughes go down to the AHL to learn defense. If that's already happening in New Jersey without Quinn over there, then I wonder what goes on if Quinn Hughes decides to take his talents over to the Devils and what the dynamic is on that team heading into the long-term future. It's something worth thinking about. And I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this Vidishire Trolls 99. And bye.